I'm sure that you heard about Saudi Green Initiative, which has three main goals. First, to cut carbon emissions by 278 million tons per year till 2030, plant 10 million trees across the country, and safeguard 3% of land and sea. To know more about achieving these goals, please join me to welcome Mr. Ibrahim Alas from Saudi Green Initiative to talk more about how we can come together to green the nation.
Thank you for the introduction. I'd like to thank Saudi Youth for Sustainability on the opportunity to speak today on the Saudi Green Initiative, and in particular Greening KSA, which is the program to plant, but we won't say plant, but to establish 10 billion new trees in Saudi Arabia. And this is my slide clicker, thank you. We all know that land degradation and biodiversity loss present the key challenges with widespread environmental, social and economic costs. Desertification is, of course, a key concern in Saudi Arabia, with up to 30% of vegetated land surface showing productivity decline. Biodiversity, we're expected to lose 46% of our species in the planet by 2050, and that's quite a startling statistic. Arable land, the key element of producing food in the world, is set to decline, or it's being degraded in MENA by 40 to 70%. Economic activity as a result of desertification could potentially lose $6 trillion US dollars per year through lost ecosystem services and land degradation. And of course, importantly, social well-being. When more deserts are produced, it undermines people's abilities to sustain themselves. One of the flagships of the SGI, one of the three main projects, is the planting of 10 billion trees within the kingdom in the coming decades. It's not just about planting the trees, it's also about rehabilitating land. And our key success factors in this is the utilisation of native plant species, the use of renewable water resources, maintaining ecological balance. Or it's not about just maintaining ecological balance, it's about re-establishing the ecological balance that has existed in the past. Utilising state-of-the-art innovation and technology, and this is one of the key things of the project, because if we don't introduce new technologies and new innovations, we're not going to be able to achieve our targets. And of course, very importantly, creating social and economic sustainability and environmental sustainability, which is why we're all here. The expected impact of sustainably planting 10 billion trees in the kingdom, firstly, is supporting the environment and supporting the kingdom's effort in reaching net zero by 2060. Now, this is a fairly big challenge in the kingdom, and one of the key aspects is, of course, meeting our objectives in terms of the Paris Climate Accord. Reversing land degradation and desertification, and also drought reduction, maximising green and protected areas where the kingdom has expressed its desire to have 30% of the ground cover as national reserves, combating climate change and temperature rises, which of course is another major concern for the planet and in particular Saudi Arabia, increasing protected areas and bolstering biodiversity. The social impacts, of course, supporting community well-being. Having more green is going to improve the lives and better the lives of everyone in the community. It enhancing social cohesion by people becoming involved in greening and planting programs, supporting public health, enhancing food security. We're not just planting trees to make the world look a better place, but also the potential to grow food. Increasing job creation, and promoting pride in being involved in a national large-scale greening initiative. The economic impacts, of course, it's going to support value creation. It's going to support many sectors of the economy and diversify those sectors as well, improving net per capita income of particularly local communities in the rural areas that need employment to sustain those communities, and of course grow GDP of the forest sector products, but we won't say it's the greening sector products. The expected benefits of the project, well, there are many benefits to the project. The national strategy, which sets out the vision and strategic objection, and speaking of the project, I'm saying the project that we're involved in, providing clear strategic direction and transparency to support funding and operational decisions, preferred afforestation scenarios, clear governance and monitoring programs to drive implementation and progress, establishing a national geospatial platform whereby we can not only drive but also monitor and maintain the programs that are going to be put in place, building a database, collaboration with local entities, NGOs, etc., and spreading awareness amongst local community for direct engagement in future implementation. And very, very importantly here, engaging young generations and driving cultural impacts to sound environmental practices. So what are we doing at KAUST? Well, KAUST through the CDA is providing the scientific leadership in the national ambition to plant 10 billion trees. With our consortium partners, we are advising the National Centre for Vegetation Cover, the NCVC, which is part of the Ministry of Environment, Water and Agriculture, on the strategic directives for the initiative. We're going through a process now of environmental assessment, and then we're going to be moving into the science and technology of greening, and then preparing a strategic master plan for the ministry. Our key success factors in the project is commercialising innovation, getting more community engagement, and sustainability, of course, is primary in our efforts. The outcomes, we want to support climate change abatement, prevent desertification, and of course provide jobs and opportunities for economic diversification in Saudi Arabia. The strategy involves looking at numerous eco-zones or action zones, as we've called them, looking at wildlife, studying wildlife parks, wastewater, how we can better use wastewater treatment plants in greening, greening urban areas, roads and railways, mangroves, wadis and dams, areas around government facilities, combating desert encroachment, which is a key concern, looking at mountainous areas and how we can better improve the ecologies of mountain areas, inland marshes, fodder farms, rangelands, plant and seed propagation. And so really the study and the work that we're doing is holistic. We're of course engaging with our stakeholders, addressing the science, looking for innovation, creating systems, agronomic systems, also how we're going to manage and improve the environment, and the end result also is to help improve the economy. I want to thank everyone for listening to my speech today, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thanks. Do I stay here or do I sit down?
Any questions from the audience? We can have some questions.
Yeah. Any questions? Oh, good.
Okay.
Would love to.
Okay, no problem.
Yes. Any questions? Last chance.
Here we go. Okay.
Amazing talk.
Hi, how are you doing? This is Abdurrahman Shahrani, University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. Quick question in terms of the renewable water treatment, the source of the water that you are using. So I'm 100% sure that whenever you want to plant, like, for example, 10 million, this huge number of trees, so you're going to use multiple sources of water. we are talking about desalination water, we are talking about groundwater. So do you have any kind of access to the database of groundwater that you have? Because, for example, the last database that we have in terms of the groundwater, we have from the 1985. So what do you have this kind of things based on estimations, or do you have this kind of things based on a serious database?
Okay. Firstly, we're only going to be using water from renewable sources.
Interesting.
Okay, so groundwater for agricultural and human purposes are not going to be used by the program. That's number one. Number two, one of the key elements of the project is to see how we can harvest wet water better in the kingdom. A lot of water is lost. For example, in the southwestern region, 10 billion cubic metres per annum is lost because of inefficient water harvesting techniques.
Last question: is the technologies for renewing the water, is it developed or underdeveloping?
Look, there are actually, at KAUST, there are numerous initiatives and numerous innovations that are going on at different centres. There's actually competing centres for water production, atmospheric water production, water harvesting. There's numerous techniques that we're going to use, but one thing is very clear: we are not going to tap into the ancient aquifers that have been so heavily depleted in the past decades due to agriculture.
Thank you so much.
No worries.
Hello, my name is Hajar. I'm from Afet University. I have two questions. First question is, first of all, thank you for the great presentation. My first question is, what are the artificial intelligence technologies that are used to implement this project? My second question is, after implementing this project and planting all these trees, how is this going to directly impact the physical health of individuals? Thank you.
First question's a really good one, and there's a number of different technologies that we're using, and they're all related to AI. Firstly, identification of plant species using satellite imagery can be done now with. There's so many things we can do with AI. There's a long list, but just one of them is looking at invasive species. And what we can do with the satellite imagery is we can have multispectral imagery of a site or a zone, and then know that from ground truthing that this is, so we then of course do a relationship with that, the satellite imagery, and we know that that area could be a puntia or prosopis or a native species. That's number one. Number two, we can use AI to actually count the amount of camels that are in the desert. And sorry, just your second question, just quickly again.
My second question was, what is the impact of this?
Oh, okay. Well, the impact that's quite a big one. But just one of the impacts that we're trying to we're going to be doing a lot of different simulations here at KAUST on what is the impact, the climatic impact of planting 10 billion trees, or providing 40 million hectares of green cover. Okay, so what we do is we simulate the green cover, and we look at what the change to the sunlight reflectance is, and what the potential impact that can happen on surface temperature, for example.
Sorry. Yeah. What is the impact on the physical health of individuals?
Well, look, we're going to have more oxygen and less CO2, so that's a fairly right. We're planning. We're trying to achieve net zero carbon emissions. So it means that the country is not producing whatever it produces in carbon emissions. It's sequestering via organic means.
Thank you so much.
No worries. Thanks. Any other questions? Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Now we have a great surprise for you. We invited the founder of Nabatic to talk about very shortly about his initiative and what we have from him. Okay, thanks.
Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Iman Haji. Thank you, KAUST and SYS for the invitation. There is a Chinese proverb that says, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. But the second best time is today. We are all gathered here today to plant the seed for a sustainable future. A future where our next generation and our generation will thrive and prosper. I strongly urge you and advise you to take today as an opportunity, to take today as a trigger to spark your imagination, to innovate today, not tomorrow. To start something that will solve a global and local challenge. There are many challenges, locally and globally. And solving each one of those challenges is an opportunity. And they're not going to solve themselves. They need you, each one of you, to solve them. And that means tons of opportunities to start something big and great. I mean, look at the Sustainable Development Goals. There are 17 goals. Each one of those goals have its own targets. Each one of those goals have its own challenges and problems. And that means each one of those goals have their own opportunities. In Nabatic, for example, we're trying to solve climate change issues. We're trying to combat climate change. We're trying to improve life on land. And we're trying to build sustainable cities and communities by planting millions and millions of trees, using the power of technology and the goodwill of people. How? We look at what are the challenges of today's companies. What are they facing? I mean, how can they plant millions of trees if they don't know how to do it? How can they offset their carbon emission if they don't have the budget for it? I mean, we want to help them to plant as many trees as possible at as little cost as possible. The solution was to find ways to minimize the cost of planting a tree, to help them calculate their impact and how much carbon they're removing from air, to build value for them. In other words, to incentivize those companies to plant more and more trees. And why now? The Saudi Green Initiative is targeting to plant 10 billion trees in the kingdom and 50 billion trees in the Middle East. And that is an ambitious target, an ambitious goal. And we cannot achieve it without good partnership, breakthrough innovation, and cutting-edge technology. And from what I see here in this room, and from KAUST, and from your faces, I am really optimistic that we all are going to achieve this target together. And that is why we must act now and today, because it is our duty as youth to be the custodians of the future, to do everything in our power to ensure that our future is sustainable. Remember, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. And the second best time is today. Thank you very much, everyone.
Mr. Mohammed Al-Khaldi, and thank you for Nabatic. Thank you so much. Now I would like to invite you for the poster session presented by you, the change makers, and for the networking lunch in the library from now until 1 p.m. Please make sure to come back here at 1 p.m. And also, if you have a translation device, please make sure to return it when you leave the auditorium. Thank you.